Well, hi, Susan. Welcome to the Author Revolution podcast. I am really excited that you're coming on the show today. We found each other actually through this new program that I've been introduced to. It was interesting. You don't know this, but one of the author groups that I follow was very adamant about this pod match place. And I was like, what is this? And so I had to go digging around and taking a look. And the next thing I know, you are on my doorstep, which was fabulous. I saw your profile. And there's so much that you and I kind of resonate with that I was like, we need to bring Susan on because it's amazing how much you do. So, first of all, welcome. And why don't you go ahead and tell my audience just a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, I never thought I'd be on a podcast called Author Revolution in 2007. An Irish seer told me, "You have a book to write. It's going to help a lot of people." And I shoved that under the carpet I could find. I was like, I'm not going through all that for a PR tool. You've got to be out of your mind. And then the pandemic hit in 2020, and I had two intuitives back to back bring it back up. You've got a book to write. And the third intuitive said, You have three books to write. And I was like, oh, before this turns into a fluffing library, let me get going. But it's been a circuitous route to this place. I grew up in a very challenging environment. I was raised by a genius astrophysicist, but he also loved to uncork the whiskey bottle at 7:30 a.m. and glug, glug, glug. And he had a little issue with womanizing and was a bit of a Peter Pan. And my mother had five children before she was 30.
Wow.
And she came from a very troubled past. Her father, my grandfather, was beaten almost to the point of death by a stepmother. And he, in turn, did the same to my mother. And so my parents were hurt and abused children raising very hurt and abused children. And it
Sure.
was something that I was highly aware of. I'm what some would say a super empath. So I can immediately feel the tenor, the tone, the texture of the room, the emotions. And as a youngster and now quite a bit in adulthood too, but I don't like to go there. It's very Southern California hooey. I was quite telepathic. I could read the thoughts of the adults in the room, and they didn't very much like it when I would spout out exactly what they were thinking. So it was a very dangerous place. It had all the signs and the symptoms of a toxic family. And it also was the perfect spot for me to be raised, the middle of five kids with these two pseudo adults. And I dreamed of going to New York City and being like Barbara Walters. I would watch her on my beanbag chair, on my belly in my basement. And I was like, I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to be like Barbara Walters. And I got to New York at 19. And I was living in Greenwich Village on my own. I negotiated an arts management internship before it was chic, because back then in college, they wanted you to stay in line in your trowel, pay your tuition, and pass go. But I negotiated my way out, and there I was in New York City and went back right after college and worked at this very glittery talent agency where they represented everybody who's a household name. It was very, very exciting. And I wasn't making enough money, Carissa, to pay my bills. So
That
I
sounds
took up,
familiar. Yeah.
yeah, I took up a side hustle as an exercise trainer. And Barbara Walters became my client.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing. Oh,
It's been an amazing ride. I'm quite a manifester, but I didn't really understand it. And Barbara would have loved you. She would have loved your listeners. She was a girl's girl. She was highly intuitive. There was a reason she was such a great journalist and celebrity interviewer. One day I rang her doorbell at 7 a.m. and she said, Susan, what is going on with you? Get in here. And within moments, she had it out of me that I had been sexually harassed in the workplace the day before. And she said, I'm coming to work with you this morning and we're going to confront this man together. Oh I think I
Wow.
got it covered. So I did go to work that day and I confronted my boss and he asked me, "Do you have everything you need?" And I kind of quizzically said, "Yes." And he said, "Great, you're fired." And I was about 90 days sober. All those red flags that I had seen in my family of origin were coming up in my early 20s in my own life. I was somebody who was very determined, very focused, very driven. I was finding myself in very seedy relationships. My friends were more and more fair weather, and it required a Walkman and sunglasses and a hat to walk around Manhattan. So I knew something was awry. And um, getting clean was the first mandate. And I was also newly out of a very abusive relationship where the man held the purse strings, I'm embarrassed to say. And Barbara wanted to know how how the day had gone the next time I had seen her for our session. And I told her, and she said, "Well, you can assist my fiance, who was running a huge film distribution company at the time." Another glittering assignment, right? But I said, "Barbara, I just can't, not after what I've experienced. I can't be an assistant any longer." And I went on to match celebrities with brands. The modern art master, Andy Warhol, was the first person that I convinced to do a car commercial that he had no interest in doing, trust me. And that's a whole nother story. And then that led me into producing for television and film, and then eventually from New York to LA.
Wow. Wow. That is an amazing like journey to get you to where you are now, right?
It
How?
doesn't match, does it? It doesn't.
Wow. It's
Although it
amazing. It does, though. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of, I have a couple of friends in my life that are like that, where it's like they've had this big, glorious, wonderful life. And it's like there's multiple lives in that one like lifespan. My husband's even one of those where it's like he looks back at like all of the things he's done over the years, and you're just like, how am I here at this place now? Like what? What just happened?
Well, I don't
Wow.
I don't want to get too hooey, but I've definitely been led. I mean, this photo that's in the back of me is a photo out my back slider, and it's a picture of the Canadian Rockies in a vast prairie. Montana was not even on my bucket list. Maybe move to Central or Northern California. And here I am living in Montana. It's where I finished the book. It's where I was when it was published. And I'm absolutely in the right place and the right timeline to move forward.
Yes. Well, that is wonderful. And that's such a great segue. So let's talk about this wonderful book. You've written a book called Toxic Family: Transforming Childhood Trauma into Adult Freedom. And so obviously you gave us a little teaser onto like what the inception of the story was, but can you tell us more about the book?
How's that for a title, huh?
Right?
My title is Magical Illumination: Transforming Childhood Trauma into Adult Freedom. I love my family. I feel like they were perfect teachers for me, and it's taken me a long time to get to that place, but I truly believe there are no accidents. And I have so much love for them, and I didn't want to throw them under the bus. And I swear it felt like 2 weeks before the publishing date, and my publisher called and said, "Oh, by the way, we'd like to change the title to Toxic Family." And I thought my stomach fell out of my body. I was just
Oh
sweat
no.
everywhere you could sweat. But, tossing it back and forth, I realized the people that need to be reached by what this book has to say, they would respond more to Toxic Family than
Yeah.
Magical Illumination. They might be a little disappointed, but this
Yeah.
is the personal and professional trajectory that I've experienced. It's a memoir, but people like to call it a self-help memoir. I guess, it's a hybrid today. One of my
Oh.
first editors totally just backlash me that, "Oh, there's no such category as memoir self-help."
Oh
But
my
anyway,
God. Then you
yeah,
make one.
yeah, exactly.
New
Yeah, I just,
categories are made all the time.
yeah. I again picked the patriarchal, you know, pretext, but I came to my senses. And then there's an appendix in the back that has really helpful tools that I garnered over the years that have really helped me transform and move through all of the experiences, the alcoholism, the addictions that are multiple, the 10-year bout with clinical depression. And then ultimately, I think the perfect storm was facing narcissistic abuse.
Right, right. I can't even imagine. I grew up in a very loving household, so I didn't have a lot of that. I think there's definitely alcoholism throughout the family, but for the most part, we've all been very supportive of each other, which has been great. And so listening to, different stories of how lives were so much more difficult. Like I have nothing to complain about when I listen to, stories of triumph and of trauma and toxic families and like how people can overcome and get to a point where you are obviously where you still can house love and appreciation for the fact that you were in that position. And I think it obviously speaks to your broader understanding, your higher consciousness understanding of we get what we need in order to evolve in the way that we want to evolve, right? So like maybe we don't understand it as we come in here, and so we don't realize that we kind of asked for this type of situation in one way, shape, or form, but it allowed us to blossom and bloom into the person that we ultimately needed to become. And then being able to look back and be like, they were perfect. This was the perfect setting for me, even though it was hard at the time. That's wonderful. What a great lesson. Wow.
It's been quite a journey.
Right.
I didn't start out in that place, but I think Marianne Williamson might have been the first teacher in the 80s. She used to speak on the Upper West Side. I lived in Manhattan after college, I think I mentioned. And she would bunk at my friend Tara's apartment, which was right down the street from this church. And then she'd give these lectures, like once a month. And she told us a story one night about coming in from the airport and having this cab driver that was absolutely vicious, like bombastic and nasty and, just really awful. And honestly, I couldn't wait to get out of that cab as she was telling us this story. So she arrives at Tara's place. She opens the cab door, and instead of slamming it shut, she tips this guy double. And she said, you have to understand when people are in that state, they are screaming for love. And that was the first seed that was really planted to turn my belief system around.
Wow. That just gave me goosebumps. I love that. I love stories like that so much. That is awesome. And Marianne Williamson is so like profound. She's so wonderful too herself. That's how cool is it that you were in those circles? Like, isn't that, do you ever look back and just go, wow, like,
It's rather interesting, a little small town girl from central Pennsylvania ends up hosting Steven Spielberg around the lot and ripping out Vince Vaughn's clothes and putting George Clooney's in the trailer and, convincing Taylor Swift she needs to be interviewed by cartoon characters. It's kind of interesting,
I love that.
the trajectory, and it's
Right?
been really fun, but ultimately, it's not been my purpose.
Yeah. It's just been great, great. Well, it's not even stories really. It's about the experiences of those people and what they could teach you, right? That's so awesome.
Mostly that they put their pants legs on one at a time, but they have to
That's
do it
true
in
too.
public.
Yeah. That's a good point. Can't unsee that, but all right, that's fine. So what was the journey or the experience like of then, okay, you've got this mission, you're gonna have to write a book, and you're like, okay, I am, huh? My close friend Tammy Tyree, she's the hypnotist that's in my programs. She had kind of a similar situation where she was told basically in a channeled message she had a book to write. And so it's like, what was that experience like for you? And how did the publishing game go for you?
Yeah. So I didn't really want to do it. But then when I was told that I had 3 books to write, I thought, okay, I got to squirm out of this somehow. I'll just start this. And I started it like any TV producer would have. I helped launch Fox News Channel, and we'd come in the morning at 7, and one of the supervisors would give us, our assignment. You have to come up with this topic and you have to have 2 points of view and multi ethnicities, and you go live at 4 p.m. So I was used to like taking tasks and making it happen no matter what. And that's the
Gotcha.
way that I approach this manuscript. And it did give me a first pass within 9 months. But what it didn't give me, Carissa, and I think this is so important, is a connection to the
Oh, sure.
material. It was
Okay.
another automation. It was another, it, exercise to create and complete. And a really wise mentor said to me, and everybody listen, 2 for 1. She said to me, go back through it and take another pass from little Susie's point of view. That little beautiful light inside your heart, that piece of your soul that's on this journey with you, and just see what happens. Oh my gosh. It wasn't so much that the black and white words of the page changed, but my connection to my story and my journey and my purpose did.
Wow. That's awesome. That is so awesome. So you were able to, it's interesting, and I hope people did listen to that because it is interesting when you're writing a story and you're going through them, especially when you've been in this gig for a long time. Like for me, I've written almost 30 books at this point, and you get to a point where you're like, am I even connecting to the story anymore? Am I even connecting with what I'm trying to talk about? And so when you go back through those edits and you look at it again, you can tell where you kind of like were in and out and where you're kind of like you're half-assing it or whatever. And then where you came back in, you were focused again. And so then having that opportunity to look at it with those fresh eyes and really using a different lens or coming at it from that higher vibrational place or whatever, however you want to describe it, it can be so powerful of a tool to be able to make it even better, to make that manuscript, that story, even better. And wow, what an interesting thing to have happen. So as you went through then and altered things, obviously it came out as it is now. Was it easy for you to get published? Did you indie publish or did you self-pub or did you trad publish? How did you go about that process?
Yeah, so I knew I didn't have the chops to really get it together enough to self-publish, and I so admire those that are able. I had an amazing producing partner in LA, and she has a platform where she creates experts. So she brands people as experts, and part of that branding was a publishing label, and she became a New York Times best-selling publisher. So
Wow.
one day that intuitive voice was like, send the manuscript to Jackie, send the man. And I was like, shut up. I can't send it to Jackie. She's a New York Times bestselling publisher. So I sent it to her on a Friday afternoon. And she texted me Monday morning. And she said, I read your book in one sitting and I want to publish it. And I almost started crying.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. How
Yeah.
wonderful is that? See, it's like all
Yeah.
these little connections that sometimes you don't even realize how powerful they are. I mean, how long had you known this publisher?
I knew her for a really long time, like a couple of decades probably. Um, and again, her name is Jackie Jordan. Just Google her. She's all over.
Love it.
She's extraordinary. She's amazing. Reach out to her. Yeah, she's quite an individual woman and power of force.
Wow, isn't that amazing though? I mean, a few decades before you even knew you were going to write this book, and you were already connected to the person that was going to help. I think I want my audience to hear that. I just released a podcast episode about how your perfect author career is already in existence. It's already out there. And it's like, if we just allow that in, look at how the synchronicities unfold and how they come together and how it like everything can be easy when you let it. Like it's so wild. I love that so much.
I'm
Cool.
so grateful that you talk about that topic with your listeners because it's imperative. It's not what is endemic in our systems, in any of the systems, in the education system, in most of our family systems, not all, obviously, even in our healthcare system. But that coming from that place is coming from the heart.
Yeah.
And I was taught to be up in my head. But
Right?
as soon I started to learn. I mean, I had to reprogram myself, like sit down at my computer and type away because I really wanted to, because it might be fun. I'm like, when that suggestion was made to me, I'm like, are you kidding me? What's fun about this? I've got to get this done. This is an assignment. But when you come from that place, there is so much magic and so much serendipity. And also the path that's already before you, that yellow brick road, it just comes in one piece at a time if you're willing to be open and
Yes.
listen to that heart instead of what's going on upstairs. And then ultimately, it's that figure eight of infinity, bringing them both together, heart and mind, so beautifully.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. I think it is such a good lesson for people to understand and try to process through because, like you said, we don't, especially people who are creative, I think we think for a while we think that it's all in our head, like the creativity, the sparks of intuition, it's all in our minds, but it's really not. It's that whole body aspect. It's everything coming together, but mind, body, soul, intuition, whatever you want to call it, it's all coming together for the greater good. And so when we can trust that and stop trying to force things,
Well,
it all
and
comes together.
also devil's advocate to that end, to really love yourself and be gentle when you do force it and you do come to your,
Yeah,
because that is the programming and that is what we are dropping a minute
right.
at a time. And that's another reason, I wrote this book and published it.
I love that. Well, we were talking before the podcast started too, that there's definitely authors in my community who have had traumatic events in their past, who have issues that they're trying to overcome themselves. So I know that you're obviously someone who understands this from a very deep perspective. So how could they use create transformation, I guess, from the trauma that they've endured in their life so that they can move on and really embrace the destiny that's waiting for them?
Well, now it's a very clear map for me, but it was a bit like Sherlock Holmes when I was moving through it. So first, I'd like to say to those listeners, you are in such angelic hands, and it's so lovely that you have an awareness of your trauma. For a lot of us, it's completely blacked out. It's
Sure.
amnesia everywhere. So that's the first blessing, that you have this knowing. And then next, to understand that it's for purpose. I mean, certainly next time I come in, I'm going to read the fine print a little more clearly before I agree to what I signed up for. But just if you could lift that boulder and move through the muck and see the gold, which is not fool's gold, under that boulder that's waiting for you. And trust me, I know it's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart, but it is true. And if you can see the trauma through that lens, and ultimately, I'm not saying it's in this moment, but ultimately down the road, have compassion for those that inflicted it upon you, because God forbid you're having to inhabit the meat suit they do. My goodness, that's rough stuff.
Right.
So that's how I found the compassion in my heart to move through the trauma and then to let it go. I mean, I had a serious divorce from an alleged narcissist that was not pretty. And I called him my greatest guru as a teacher. I think it's chapter 12 in the book. And I remember reading through the book before, the last, before it goes to print, you got the galley, you're sweating bullets. God forbid you miss a typo somewhere. I
Yes.
read chapter 12 and I remember closing the book and the thought went through my mind, oh my God, that woman is strong. And then I realized, oh, that woman is you. Hello. But
That is so cool.
these traumas can transform into absolutely priceless gifts. And it's not easy to dissect, but it is possible.
Absolutely. I think there's always beauty on the other side of it. There's always, regardless of what happens, even when there's a challenge in it, there's a way to perceive it differently that can make you feel better. And I think that's our ultimate goal as human beings, not just writers, obviously, but to find those moments when the contrast is so deep that you can still find peace in the moment or still find peace in yourself. Or it just, I think those moments of resilience just fascinate me endlessly. It's so wonderful to kind of like just think about and not necessarily want to be in those situations, but to understand like that the power that we have to overcome anything, honestly. So it's awesome. Okay, so I know that you have a belief very similar to mine in interconnectedness, and the power of healing through being authentically yourself. Do you want to explain a little bit about how that came about and how you use it in your daily life?
That's the school of hard knocks. I mean, I always stood out like a sore thumb from, kindergarten on. I remember when they came to me and told me, you have to start writing with your other hand. I wrote with my left hand. And I was like, it was me and Bonnie Hunt at the table. And Bonnie beautifully, put the pencil in the right hand and started writing. And I was like, no way, I'm sticking with my left hand. And I'm still a lefty as far as like, signing my signature. Um, I don't know what the point of that was because I totally lost the train of thought, but it did have some to the
It's
question that you
interconnected to
asked me.
something and being authentically yourself, right? Being authentically
Well,
you with your left-handedness.
yes, and
Yeah.
and also to accept it. I mean, I vibrate at a different level. I just do. I did not fit in a corporate system. I could not figure it out the two times I tried it, once at ICM and once at Fox. I just don't fit, and I had to surrender to it. And most people think, that know me, they're stunned that I put this book out. They're proud of my power and what I've lived through and transformed, but why would you hang your dirty laundry out for everyone to see? And I just feel like, that dirty laundry is like smelling pretty good and it's going to help with transformation, even if it's just
Oh,
one. And it's been many more than one since
right.
I've done it. So I've always been the outsider. I've always been one who sees it differently. I'm the one who speaks up at those meetings when everybody else is just silent and trying to appear invisible.
I love that. Oh, too cute. Yeah, it's interesting when you're kind of coming at things from a different angle, even though, it's almost like being the black sheep of the family or being the black sheep in your social circle or high school or whatever. But there's just something about you that you have to trust and follow with, and it's going to lead you someplace and you don't quite know what it is. But that's the exciting part because now all of a sudden you're exploring and you're challenging yourself and you're doing some of the things that maybe others are scared to even try to do. I I think that's really cool. I know that's definitely how I try to look at my reality and what I get to do. And it's something that I'm in the process of kind of transitioning more over, where I'm consciously, actively, truly believing that no matter what happens, I feel I'm supported, right? And I think authors need a little bit of that too, because we kind of get into this, especially indie authors, and a lot of my audience is indie authors, but we get into this place of like fear-based, is this ever going to work for me? Why isn't this working for me? Or um, you know, uh, people don't pay indie authors, whatever it is. And so we get into this fear-based reality where we can't quite break from it. And so if we can start telling ourselves those different stories of how connected we are, how it all comes to us at the right moment, how we can, trust our emotional guidance system or any of those things, I think it's going to make our lives so much more interesting and fun and challenging, but in a good way, right? So you've obviously talked a couple of times about intuition. Um, do you have any moments specifically for yourself, like even recently or whenever, that you've allowed your intuition to really lead you forward?
Oh my gosh. Well, of course, I can remember all of the times that I did not let intuition lead
I,
me.
I kind of understand that one too. Yeah.
But now it's almost become to the place where I can't not because the voice is so clear. I think as the energies are shifting on our planet, and I see this as a remarkable time,
It
this
is.
chaotic place is actually turning into something absolutely magnificent for us. And it will be easier for all of us to believe in our value and our worth and believe in our manifestation ability and believe what we're producing has
Right.
merit just for being what it is. So I think the most recent intuitive moment, I was looking into different types of long-term life insurance, and the financial guy like gave me a stock tip, right? He's like, you got to buy it. And then he texted me 2 days later, it had gone up like $200. But my intuition was like, yeah, no, don't buy that. Nope. It was so clear. And I had to just resist, even though I saw it go up for some reason. I'm not
Ye-
supposed to buy that stock.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and then you trust that and you keep moving on and see what happens. I love that. And it's so interesting how it can be something as simple as that, like a nudge from that particular thing. It could be, I shouldn't have this next cup of coffee. Maybe I'll get too jittery. I don't know. Or like, I've said I'm going to put my audiobook out on X day, and you're feeling like you're just not in the vibe of it. It's like there's always these little things that come up, and you have to kind of lock into, where is it coming from? Is it fear-based or is it intuition-based? And based off of how you feel, like, does it make you feel better to trust it, or does it make you feel more in fear? And so that's how you can kind of distinguish and differentiate, I think, for those of you out there who haven't really kind of moved through your intuition muscle quite yet. So do you meditate?
I do. I started meditating probably in my late 20s, and I had gone on a lot of like 10-day, week-long silent meditation sits. And what happened to me was I would get crystal clear and I would get my telepathic ability back. Like I got out of one retreat and went to the grocery store and could hear the chatter of the checkers, mind as I was checking out, and it really freaked me out. So I've come and gone with meditation. I was very structured for quite some time. And now I'm finding I'm back to sitting on the cushion again for, I don't know, 10 or 20 minutes. I'm not very judgmental, but I see that I live in meditation. I used to swim. I was a master swimmer and I would watch the black line. That's meditation. I walk my dog around the prairie. That's meditation. I'm chopping vegetables for the vegetarian chili, and that's an opportunity for meditation. So, I feel like we got some funky programming on the
Right.
meditation too.
Yes. Yes, I totally agree with you. I mean, it's when you think about it, it's why it's so soothing to watch a fire, or why it's so soothing to watch the waves. It's because you allow yourself to shut down the chatter of your mind. And that's all meditation is, shutting down the chatter of your mind so that you can allow that space of nothing to kind of allow in what's trying to come through versus all the thoughts you're trying to force to have happen, right?
Well,
It's it's
I'm
yeah.
kind of giggling with you, Carissa, because my mind's pretty chattery.
My
And
mind is too. My mind is too. But it is so nice to do the meditations, and it naturally raises your vibration. And I think that's part of the reason why Tammy and I created the Your Future Self program, so that we can do all of the getting out of our own way, first of all, because we have hurdles of jumping over, like, what meditation should I do today, or what hypnosis should I do today, or how do I get into a system. And so we created this thing where it's 4 weeks of alternating either a hypnosis or a meditation based off of who's doing what. And then it has a theme. And interestingly enough, our theme for March is inner gold, and your last name is Gold. So I thought it was so funny. I'm like, perfect timing. This is just the universe bringing you right in right now. It just makes so much sense. And it just, at least it's that intuition thing, where you get that like rush of like, this was meant to be. This was totally meant to be. So
Totally. Is that through your website? Because I want to know more. Is it
yeah.
good?
Yep, yep. So people who are interested in getting into the program, it's on authorrevolution.org. And so you can go to like courses and memberships. There's like a little link at the top, and then go find it. It's right the memberships are actually right at the top. So Your Future Self is right there. And so every month we're putting in a new like mind magic workout for your future self, and each one has its own theme. And so last month was Love It Up for February. and this month is inner gold. And so I had to like tap into some sort of like leprechaun-y vibe. That was my intuition nudging me there. So that's what I did.
I love that you manifested it. I love that you took the time that it takes to produce those kinds of tools and that you have it so readily available, and I'm gonna check it out.
Oh, heck yes. Well, and it's fun too. It was very similar to your book situation where we were doing meditations and hypnosis for some of the courses that we do. But I had a student, she knows who she is, she's wonderful, who was like, "Oh, I really wish that we had like a schedule. Like all of these meditations and things are great, but I wish I had a schedule to keep me on track." And so we had played around with the concept of it for like 6 months. I'm so sorry, Heather. I'm so sorry, Heather, that it took me that long. But now that we've got it going, it's been so much fun to put it together and have everything organized. It's been great. And I'm so glad that she, number one, suggested it, or kind of, she didn't even suggest we do it. It was more just like that intuition of her, I wish I had this thing, and then me going, "Oh, I could do that." Like, yeah, yeah. So it's been so much fun. It's probably one of my most favorite things that we were creating right now for Author Revolution. So, okay, well, we're obviously on the same vibe. We have a very similar viewpoint of things. Is there anything else that you want my audience to know about you, or about your wonderful memoir and story that is going on in Toxic Family?
Well, I'm relating to what you're doing with Author Revolution, and I too got the messaging. So I just created a little mini course where people can take it and really explore the signs of a toxic family, the remnants that it leaves you
Oh,
to work with, and some tools. So if you want to check that out, you can go to susangold.us, but just send me an email, info@susangold.us, and I'll give you the password to the
ooh,
course, so you don't even have to pay for it. And yeah,
that's wonderful.
the book, check it out. It's in all the right places, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, but the website has everything, susangold.us, and there's even a free conversation if you want to have a chat.
That's wonderful. And I will definitely have everything in our show notes as well. So if you want to check that out, head over to authorrevolution.org, and it will be located in there. I believe the episode is 225. So authorrevolution.org/225.
225, that takes a lot of effort and time and production and preparation and finance. And here you are.
Thank
Brava.
you.
Brava to you, to your partner, and to your listeners.
Thank you. They are wonderful. And thank you so much for being here today, because they got to listen to you and your wonderful story. And I hope you all check out her book, Toxic Family. It's going to be very helpful and instrumental to those of you who are really suffering or trying to get over that trauma, and try to transform into something more powerful. Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.